John and Ken Show. John Cobell and Ken Champeau, KFI AM 640.
Hey, welcome. All right, it was a week ago. Yes, the 4 o'clock hour last Friday that we were talking about a column in the LA Times by Robin Abcarian. The title on the internet version is A Bullet Train from LA to San Francisco, Have a Little Faith. And we went through it. No, it's actually not that long a column, but we went through it almost line by line to talk about it.
She believes the governor. She has faith in the governor. She believes in this high-speed rail venture. And we have her on to question her about this. Because it's
Hi guys.
baffling
How
to me.
are you?
Robin,
Happy
welcome.
Friday.
Thanks for coming on with us.
All right.
I'm happy to be here.
So you didn't hear the show, but you heard about us talking about your column? Or
Somebody tweeted a YouTube recording of the segment to me, and I thought, you know what? Those guys are kind of loose with their tongues and their insults. Why don't they just have me on if they want to read me out? I could take it.
We could do
cool. Well, that's why you're here now.
We could do a weekly Ream Robin segment if you want.
Oh, dude, I feel like you owe me a commission at this point.
Well, let's start, because I think the biggest gap between you and Ken and I is that you seem to have faith and belief, and we don't.
That is true. And
So-
I will say, oh, go ahead. You
No,
can
go
finish.
ahead. No, respond.
Well, okay, I think it's perfectly appropriate to be skeptical. This project has tons of critics. Lots of good points have been raised. But I think when you weigh the pros and the cons, that the pros come out ahead. I think that if you look, over history, you see so many public projects, big infrastructure projects that were, supposed to bankrupt the country or the state. They were, impractical, quixotic, whether it's the Erie Canal, buying Alaska, the Panama Canal, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge, BART, Washington, D.C.'s Metro. All these things were picked apart in the way you're picking apart the high-speed rail, not inappropriately at the beginning, because these are long-range projects and very expensive. But I think on balance, this is going to be a good project for the state, and it's going to last for 100 years.
Here's why I don't trust. It was mandated in the proposition that you had to have trains go 2 hours and 40 minutes. Under their plan, looking at their documents, that's impossible. In fact, the Reason Foundation has done an analysis, and so has other outside groups, and at best, it's going to be 3 hours and 50 minutes. It could be as much as 4 hours and 40 minutes, which is not trivial. It's a huge amount of time, and directly impacts how many people would use the train, which directly impacts the kind of revenue that they would get. If it says 2 hours and 40 minutes, and that's the legislative mandate, that's the promise, then they have already violated this.
Okay, here I agree with you. There's some fuzzy stuff there. The law requires a design that would allow, okay, there's your weasel word, for a trip between San Francisco and LA to occur in 2 hours and 40 minutes. You're right. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to meet that exact.
Well, they're not going to have
in practice. But
they're not going to have high speed rail in the San Francisco or in the LA area. They're going to use the slow rail tracks.
That is right. It's going to have to be slower. I forget what goes down to from like 200 miles an hour to I forget the speed limit. But the independent peer review group, which is independent and a peer review group, says that the trip will be able to take place within about 3 hours or so. I don't think that's that far off. And I think it's a lot more pleasurable than to hop on a train and get to San Francisco quickly or somewhere else in between than to go through the crap that you have to go through at the airport or to get in your car. I mean, I do this trip all the time between L.A. and the Bay Area, and I get no work done.
Would you agree that the current plan resembles nothing of what was in the ballot proposition back in 2008?
I've just tried to read that ballot proposition, and as you know, these things are incredibly technical, incredibly legalistic. But I think overall, the project that voters approved is the project they're going to get. And
let's start with the cost. It said $43 billion. That wasn't technical. That was in there.
It was $33 billion.
$33 billion.
That was the advertised number. and then it shot up to $100 billion.
So they scaled it back to 68, and that's when it went slow speed.
But slow speed, and they cut off the leg to San Diego, and they cut off the leg to Sacramento to get to 68. Well, that's fraud.
That should automatically put them out of the game.
Okay. You said last week when you were reading me a new one on the air that I was lying about the leg to San Diego. That leg is in the plan. It's
not the current plan. No, it's not in the current plan.
Yes, it is. Yes,
no, it's in
that today.
It's in the far off down the road extra plan.
It's phase 2, but it's still part of the plan. And but anyway,
but it's not part of the cost.
But what was in the proposition was, for $33 billion, you got 2 hours and 40 minutes, you got Sacramento, and you got San Diego.
And you got high speed all the way.
And all of that is false, and that's all the major points.
So that should be it. This should be dead.
I disagree with you. But what
how could you disagree with it? That's all factual. It's all on the record. That's their documents. It's not going to San Diego for $33 billion. It's not going to Sacramento. It's not going 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's not going for $33 billion.
Okay.
4 huge points, and they've already conceded it.
Hang on. It's going to go fast. It's going to get you faster than you would get places in a car. It's going to take cars off the road. We're in a state of 30 million people, and that population is increasing. It's going to be up to 40, 45 eventually. We don't have the road capacity or the airport capacity to handle trips between these two major cities.
The airport,
but isn't the
Central Valley?
Isn't the real problem commuter traffic anyway? You're kind of changing the subject. Suddenly, people driving from LA to San Francisco are clogging the roads.
Have you tried driving Highway 5 lately? Up, through the Central Valley, between the trucks and the cars.
But that's not all people going from LA to San Francisco. There's people taking short trips to other places. It's got nothing to do with the train.
The truck drivers aren't going to be using the train.
That is true, but if there will be cars off the road because they'll be using the train.
How many cars?
Here's the thing.
The Reason Foundation looked at the ridership estimates.
Yeah.
And I'll read you this. Independent reviews of the California high-speed rail projections by the Legislative Analyst Office, California State Auditor, UC Berkeley Institute of Transportation Studies, and several others, says that the ridership projections are unreliable and inflated. Experience from high-speed trains in Europe suggests that the shift of riders from cars to high-speed trains will be 90% less than what the High-Speed Rail Commission predicts. 90% less. And that's based on the existing high-speed rail that's going on in Europe. In other words...
Go ahead.
Well, there's no high-speed rail in the world that breaks even.
That's not true. In Japan, the high-speed rail is highly profitable.
The European ones go nowhere in terms of money.
All right.
And U.S. rail in general.
In fact, U.S. rail in general, none of the public rail is profitable. It's all heavily subsidized by taxpayers.
Okay, and when I pay my money to improve a highway, is that highway giving me a profit back? No.
But the mandate...
It's the price of living in a society where we provide transportation.
But the mandate in the proposition is that it has to be profitable, and it can never use any tax money.
No, it doesn't say it has to be profitable. It says it can get no subsidies for its operating expenses.
Right, that means it has to be profitable.
Or break even.
Okay.
And here's the thing.
I'll give you break even. But wait a second. How is it going to break even if their ridership estimates are inflated tenfold?
All right. I take issue with what the Reason Foundation says. And the reason I take issue with that is that I've spent a lot of time looking at the ridership projections and looking at some of the really highly technical analyses that the High-Speed Rail Authority has used. And they have done, by the way, as much as you probably
not too independent.
They've been incredibly transparent about the changes.
Wait,
really?
Whoa. Wait a second. It's now $68 billion instead of $33 billion. That's not transparent. That's fraud.
Because they've been transparent.
But that's still fraud. Because they could have told us it was $68 billion when this was up for a vote. They could have told us that it wasn't going to be
high-speed rail.
It wasn't going to be high-speed rail. It's slow-speed rail.
It is going to be high-speed rail. It's going to be... Wait, are you kidding? Have you ever used the Amtrak in California in the last few years?
No. The high-speed rail has got to be a speed that gets you there in 2 hours and 40 minutes. That was promised in the proposition, mandated by the legislation. You can't... Look, something's either legal or it's not.
Look,
you can't change the...
so literal and small-minded about this major, huge, visionary, biggest public infrastructure project.
Now you sound like one of your columns.
Yeah.
It's really hysterical.
I do sound like my column.
No, actually.
Visionary. This is going to be a big ripoff. The only people to profit are going to be the people at High Speed Rail and all their contractor friends.
If you're using public money and you put it up for a public vote, you have to tell the truth. You have to stick to your deal. You go into a car dealership, you buy a car for $25,000, and then the guy tells you it's $50,000 and you don't get a gas tank. You'd be calling for fraud.
Okay, I don't think
this is in the private sector, Robin. If this was the private sector, you'd be doing a column on fraud.
All right, hang on. We'll talk more with the LA Times columnist Robin Abcarian. We got to get into the funding next, particularly the part where she says, "Well, yeah, there is a shortfall right now. We need private investors, but maybe they could sell ads on the trains." That one really got me. We'll see how much she thinks that'll bring in. Coming up,
John and Ken show and Rob Archer is
on the tip of your tongue.
I know. John and Ken show. John Cobell and Ken Shampoo. We continue with LA Times columnist Robin Abcarian because she wrote a cheerleader column last week for Jerry Brown on the high-speed rail. Get her back on the line.
Just said that we were not visionaries. Oh, I'm insulted. About the funding, I wanted to ask you about this particular part of your column, which really made me laugh. The California High-Speed Rail Authority expects to sell ad space on the trains and anticipates that private companies will invest in the system once the first segment, a 29-mile stretch between Madera and Fresno, is up and running in 7 years. Are you serious about that sentence?
Have you ever seen a bus with advertising? Do you know how much money the MTA gets from that? How about airports?
How much money do they get?
They don't let movie companies advertise movies for free. That revenue is real ad revenue.
How much is it?
I don't know what it's going to be.
Well, then how do you know it can fund the high-speed rail construction?
It's going to be a part of the high-speed rail construction. And as far as the private companies, those are the companies that are going to bid to run the trains.
Why would they do
So
that?
let me ask you this in all honesty. I mean, don't joke around with me. A 29-mile stretch between Madera and Fresno, that is going to have investors come running because it'll just be flocked with passengers. Are you thinking that? Really, seriously?
No. It's the first segment is going to, and because it's in the Central Valley, they actually think they're going to be able to test trains as fast as 250 miles per hour.
There'll be nobody on them.
Wait. There's no train that goes that fast. That's never happened.
Well, this is what they think, because by the time they get the train on the track, there will be.
But I don't trust what they think.
But it's not about whether you trust it or not, because you guys, like many Americans, have a knee-jerk bias against big government-sponsored projects, and it's short-sighted.
No. This one we spent 6 years looking at.
Wait a second. Robin, they want to build the train. It's up to them to build credibility and live up to their promises.
There's no credibility with you guys. Look, there's a really great argument about this train to be had, but you guys are not having the argument that should be had.
Well, because I told you at the beginning, Robin, it was about.
I don't think so.
It was about trust.
Sometimes we spout like that, but not on this one. 6 years we've been talking about it. We have all the information, all the facts on our side. We're not just anti-government. This is a waste of money.
Robin, you're stereotyping.
It needs to be stopped.
You're stereotyping, Robin. You're stereotyping. You're doing
my stereotype?
The stereotype is that we have a knee-jerk anti-big government bias.
Oh, I thought the stereotype was that you're men and you keep interrupting me because I'm a woman. Can I just talk?
Are we pulling?
I'm insulted again.
Wait a second. If you're a woman, why should I worry about interrupting you? We're equals. You interrupt us, we interrupt you. You want special treatment because you're a woman? Seriously, you want special treatment because you're a woman? Okay.
I like equal treatment. Okay,
all right, well, then you're going to get interrupted.
This infrastructure is designed for at least 100 years, right? Over that time, we are going to spend vastly more on highways and airport development than we are on this train. In the scheme of state-funded transportation, guys, this is not a big
wait a second.
It's a pretty reasonable
The airport thing, what you discount, though, is that airlines will just run bigger planes to San Francisco if the population increase proves to be true. And we don't know that. We don't know that there's a population increase that's going to hit however many million.
How often do you fly between San Francisco and Los Angeles? I do it a lot.
A couple times a year. It's really fast.
It's not really fast.
Yeah, it's an hour and 15 minutes.
40% of the planes between those two cities are delayed because of weather issues, usually in San Francisco. You have to get to the airport. You have to go through security. When you get to the other end, if you're renting a car in San Francisco, you have to get on the air train. You have to go to the car rental center. It's way longer.
Wait. How is that different from the train experience?
You have to get to the train station.
You're going to get off the train station.
You get to the train, you sit down, you pull out your laptop, you get your work done. But here's something that I really think is
done on a plane.
Wait, but you're jumping all over the place here. You're
you're
creating like a big salad here of words. I can't.
It is a mishmash.
It's hard to focus you on one issue at a time.
What do you want to focus on?
Well, I go back to my original point. When any dealings that I do with a person, a company, a government, there is a limit to how much fraud that I put up with, how many lies, how many times they tell me something's not true. And at some point, my wife and I had an experience with a car dealership. Once you get to the third untruth, you're done. You're not trustworthy. You're not reliable. I'm not going to invest my faith in you. You're willing to dismiss all the big frauds, big lies, all the misinformation. I'm not.
Because I like trains.
Okay, no, that's not it. I think you're overlooking the fact that the High-Speed Rail Authority has had a whole, renovation in its staff. It's changed. It's different. You look at the budget now. I defy you to find anybody who says you cannot build this thing for $68 billion. If you say that, you're just making things up.
Well, it's
you don't
not.
Have to like it.
But wait a second. It's $68 billion.
You may eat those words because there's always cost overruns with projects.
First of all, I just watched the 405 get built.
In fact, this Tudor Perini's well known for that.
Yeah, Tudor Perini's in all kinds of lawsuits for cost overruns. And by the way, they donated a huge amount of money to the Brown campaign.
The first two contracts came in hugely under their estimates, right? Tudor and Dragados, the two firms, in fact, were, something like 400 to 500 million under estimate, the first two contracts. And,
you believe contract bids? Really? You trust those? You don't think there's going to be cost overruns?
They're using a system called design build, right? It's not that separate designers have designed it, and now it's going to contractors who are going to, smother them with change orders. This should be a process where the bids come in, where they're supposed to. And, you can pick apart your trust in government and so on. But I think
it's more than that.
It's the trust.
Look at the big picture.
No, it's the trust in this.
What was promised versus what's coming here.
You're once again, you're stereotyping us. I'm looking specific.
I'm not stereotyping you. I listen to your show. I know you guys have you have a pretty healthy mistrust of anything any government official says, and I'm not saying that's wrong.
Okay, well, if it's not wrong, then what are you arguing with me for?
But I think in this case, it is, and it's off base. And the problem is...
It's okay. So the price doubles. All right, they cut off the two legs to Sacramento and San Diego, and the train is going to take an hour longer than they promised. And I'm not supposed to be skeptical? Well, look, I'm skeptical, but I think
there's plenty to be skeptical about, but I am arguing that in the long run, not the 2-year, the 10-year, the 25-year run, but the long run, this is going to be a great thing for the state.
All right, we got to go. Well, we thank you for talking to us, Robin.
Call anytime, guys.
All right, LA Times columnist Robin Abcarian.
And Rob Archer is the news.